Happy Wednesday, Patriots fans. Harrison Graham here from Chat Sports. On today's show, we're going to get into the latest rumors around Bill Belichick, plus a little bit of a look at the latest NFL draft updates, how the order could break down, things that could take place, some wild trade buzz we're going to discuss. Lots to dive into here on today's show. And hey, like for a loss, I know it's weird, but we've talked about it. If we've come this far, Patriots fans, you might as well finish the deal. You lose this weekend, you're guaranteed to have a top 3 pick. So like the video if you want the Patriots to lose, and I guess if you want them to win, let us know why you want them to win down in the comments section. All right, let's get this from Benjamin Albright. This was tweeted from Savage Sports. Getting a quote there. The Chargers doing background on Bill Belichick. Quote from Albright, as I talked about on Broncos pregame with Dave, Logan, Harbaugh, Quinn, and Belichick are who they've been putting background work into. And I think that was the same list that Josina Anderson put out a few days ago on the Chargers as well. Belichick, there's been some reasons why the Chargers could make sense, Rolly. He's got a win now quarterback in L.A. I think just L.A. in of itself would be pretty appealing for a guy who's been living in the cold Boston area for a long time. It would be interesting to see him wearing a Chargers, headset, hat, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and ultimately the decision surrounding Bill Belichick's future in Foxborough seems to not have been officially made. There's a lot of rumors coming out today, which we'll also break down on tomorrow's video, so make sure you stay tuned for that and are subscribed. But there is no clear direction where we're heading. And if I got to be honest, Harrison, I feel like I might flip my thoughts on the scenario.
Sentimental Rolly coming out.
I don't know if it's me being sentimental or not, but I've just seen, and I've been on the train of, well, move on from Belichick. And maybe I would be able to handle him coming back if they took away his GM power and brought in someone above him that makes all of the personnel decisions, so you completely strip his GM power. But the more this drags on, the more I do actually believe that Bill Belichick will be back in some way next year in Foxborough.
Oh, man.
I really do. But when you think of the Chargers' outlook, like, it feels to me, and we've talked about this on air and not on air, that the Chargers feel like they clearly want Jim Harbaugh, but could they do a pivot and trade for Bill Belichick if they strike out on Harbaugh?
Yeah, definitely could see that. I'll add this, too. Let's say the Chargers' opening isn't realistic for Belichick. Let's just say that's the case. All of a sudden, you look around the National Football League, there was thought 7, 8, 9, 10 jobs could be open. Well, you've got Vegas. I don't think they're going that route. You've got the Chargers. We just said, well, what if they pass? Let's get to Washington now. If you're Bill Belichick, would you rather go coach in Washington or stay in New England and lose your GM powers? I'd rather stay and lose my GM powers because I at least know this is a stable organization. There is no idea where this could go in Washington. Yes, it's new ownership. There's reasons for optimism if you're a fan of that team, I suppose. But they've been a dumpster fire for over 20 years now. At least if you're Belichick, like, okay, yeah, it would suck to lose player personnel control. But this has become my home the last quarter century. I've liked coaching here. I assume deep down, at least in some capacity, he'd like to stay within the organization. So, like, I don't think the Bears' job's opening. I don't think they'd hire him anyway. The point is 6 weeks ago, there might have been 3 or 4 teams that could have made sense for Belichick. Now, it might be 1 or 2 and maybe just 1 if depending on what Washington and the Chargers do. So, it's an interesting angle. The Patriots have been playing better, but let's be clear on this. And I think Rolly and I are on the same page here. If you bring him back, there is no scenario where he can be the GM. Like, you cannot just run it back the way it is right now, at least in my opinion. So that's where I would say. Now, as far as the Chargers go, let's say they do express interest. They are picking 6th right now in the NFL draft order, Rolly. And look, I don't think they're trading the 6th pick for Bill Belichick. But
pipe dream.
If it's a 2nd-round pick, that's a top 40 pick still. Okay, that'd be nice. Even if it's a 3rd-round pick, it's a top 70 pick, so or top 75 pick. So we'll see where this goes. But I do think options are dwindling for Bill if he does want to keep coaching, and if the Patriots do decide to move on.
No, yeah, you mentioned it would be top 40, and I know a lot of Patriots fans believe that the only way they'd be willing to move on from Bill Belichick in a trade is if they are getting a first-round pick. But I do want to make this abundantly clear. As good as Bill Belichick has done, and he has been in the last 24 seasons in Foxborough, there is absolutely no chance a team is trading a top 10 pick for a coach.
Well, especially
40,
a 70-year-old, and
Yeah.
at most he's going to coach 5 to 6 more years, coach.
I will say this, though. Top 40 is very much in play. I know Sean Payton's a little bit younger, and it's a different situation for Denver, but they did trade a late first-round pick for Sean Payton just an offseason ago, so I don't think it's that outlandish to think that if Harbaugh either returns to Michigan or he doesn't want to go to the Chargers, that they pivot and potentially trade their second-round pick for Belichick, because they still do have some talent on that roster. If they get a coach, maybe they could start cooking in the right direction.
Yeah, certainly going to be interesting to follow. Would you guys trade a Belichick for a second-round pick? I mean, if you're coming to the conclusion that you're moving on, then to me this is a no-brainer. It's absolutely yes, in my opinion. Let us know what you guys think. Y for yes, in for no. But yeah, hell, I've been in the camp of if you're moving on, I still think even a third is decent value. If you've decided we have to change head coaches, 99.9% of the time in NFL history when that's the case, you just fire that coach and you get nothing for him. So if you get a day 2 draft pick, that seems like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, it's a clear yes to trade for, especially if it's top 40 pick, because it would just give New England a lot of different avenues they can go in the draft in this free agency period. If T. Higgins comes available, you can trade one of maybe potentially 2 top 40 picks in that second round for T. Higgins, or maybe you have to trade both of them to beat a package that is 1 first-round pick that is late. It also, if you just keep those picks potentially, you could have a top 5 pick to go quarterback or wide receiver or offensive tackle, and then you can use the 2 picks in the early second round to do the other 2 positions. It would allow you a lot of flexibility and a way to fast-track this rebuild that with an already good defense could make you a playoff team next season.
Coming up here in just a few moments, what will the Chicago Bears do with that number 1 pick? What will they do with Justin Fields, and how do those decisions impact the Patriots? We will talk about that coming up in a few moments. But we do have to tell you guys about our sponsor, Prize Picks. Guys, this is the perfect time to get started with Prize Picks. You got the national championship coming up in college football, Week 18 playoff games, daily fantasy made easy. The NBA is in full force as well. Before you know it, Major League Baseball will be back. You can play daily fantasy on a nightly basis at prizepicks.com/CLNS. Code CLNS gets you a deposit match up to $100. And the best part about Prize Picks is you're not playing pros. You're not playing sharks. It's just you versus the stat projections, and you take either more or less on those stats, and you start raking in the cash. Win up to 25 times your money on a 6-player entry at prizepicks.com/CLNS. Again, the code CLNS gets you a deposit match up to $100. Could the Chicago Bears, for a second straight year, decide to pull off a blockbuster trade by moving down from the number 1 overall pick? Well, Jeremy Fowler and Courtney Cronin, who covers the Bears specifically for ESPN, wrote a lengthy article on Tuesday, and here was a snippet of what they had to say. And again, this will tie directly to New England shortly. If the Bears traded the first pick, the return could be immense, they say. Several executives agree Chicago could net more than it did in the Panthers trade, and from a prospective trade partner already picking in the top 5, potentially New England. Those execs believe the price to get number 1 could be 2 future first-rounders on top of this year's first, along with the variation of a day 2 pick and or a premium veteran player on a manageable contract. And look, I think just looking at this, and obviously the Bears have to decide what they're doing at quarterback here, it's going to cost a lot to move up. Even if you're picking 3 or 4, it's going to cost you at least your first next year along with that 3rd or 4th pick, and probably another pick as well. If I'm the Bears and I'm keeping Justin Fields, I'm only doing that if I'm getting the King's ransom for the number 1 overall pick. And with how strong this QB draft is, especially at the top, there's going to be teams that might be willing to pay that. The question is, Rolly, is New England one of those teams? Let's just, hypothetical world, you're picking at 3 or 4. You're not in the top 2 where you can get Williams or May no matter what other scenarios are in play. It'll be very interesting to see what Belichick or whoever is running football operations here, what they do in that decision making.
I mean, listen, obviously, if they identify one of these quarterbacks as their guy that they believe is the franchise quarterback, maybe it ends up being Jayden Daniels, and picking 3, 4, or 5 doesn't really hurt you because you can still get him right there. It's all about what whoever's calling the shots identifies as their quarterback. But let's just say it is someone like Drake May or Caleb Williams, and they aren't picking in a range to get them. Trading up for one of them will be difficult. Now, it's going to be a lot easier to potentially trade up for Drake May rather than Caleb Williams because, as you just saw in that quote, he's going to be in there's going to be a lot of demand for him at least. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Bears do. But I will say this, and also in that article, Harrison, Fowler mentioned Fields will fetch potentially a 2nd or 3rd round pick. And then that also gives a different avenue for New England. Say the Bears end up passing on that trade, and they take Caleb Williams number 1. Well, now Fields is going to be available for trade, and he could be someone that maybe New England pivots to and targets to be the next quarterback for them. I mean, he's really improved as of late in the last 3 to 4 weeks here for Chicago since returning from injury. Harrison, you know it. He has really made the decision difficult on Ryan Poles in Chicago.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about Fields is, look, I mean, the completion, he's never going to be a 70% completion guy. You hope he gets to, 65 at some point in his career. But again, what you get with him is explosive plays, both in the running and the passing game. He's one of the better downfield throwers in the NFL. He does stuff that literally no other quarterback can do sometimes in the running game. I mean, Rolly and I were watching the Bears game last week, and he breaks 2 sacks in that game where he's breaking multiple tackles and running for first downs. I mean, he creates some very unique, explosive offensive plays for you. He comes with his faults. He misses some layups sometimes in the passing game. He has been semi-injury prone at times. He hasn't suffered a major injury, but he's had these injuries where he misses a few games here and there. So that's always going to be a concern. But if you're New England and you're saying, hey, we're going to go get Marvin Harrison Jr., we're going to go get our franchise left tackle, but we think Justin Fields and an offense that we can build around him can be effective here. If you can get him for a 2nd or a 3rd round pick, I'd be surprised if it was a 3rd, but maybe you send 2 3rds or something like that, your next 2, maybe you go that route, then that could be an interesting pivot because I do think there's going to be a market for Fields. Obviously, the Bears, the ball's in their court on whether or not they're keeping Fields or drafting a quarterback, but I think New England will have other avenues to other quarterbacks if they can't get one of the top 2 guys and they don't necessarily love a Jayden Daniels or a Michael Penix or something like that. So what would you guys rather do? If you would rather just trade up for a quarterback this year, type QB to trade up, or if you'd rather trade for Justin Fields, maybe a day 2 pick, type JF for Fields. And really what this comes down to is your own evaluations. I mean, do you think trading up big capital to get Caleb Williams or Drake May on a rookie contract is better for the short and long-term healthier franchise than trading, a top 40 to 75 pick for Justin Fields? That's the decision you have to make. So it's intriguing to think, hey, you get Marvin Harrison, 3rd, 4th pick, you trade your day 2 pick for Justin Fields. I mean, instantly, those are your 2 best offensive players, Rolly. I don't think that's very hard to say at all watching this offense.
I'm kind of in. I'll be honest. Like, if you trade your 2nd round pick for Justin Fields, right, then you take Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3, 3rd round pick maybe goes towards offensive tackle, and now you have an offense. If you could sign one of the guys in free agency that is top-tier wide receiver, whether it be a Michael Pittman Jr. or maybe even you go the experienced route. Maybe you can sway Mike Evans to Foxborough. I mean, it's a long shot. But
or even if you go to those like tier 2 guys, like it's a deep receiver, like a Tyler Boyd, like bring a vet on a 1-year deal. Like there's guys out there that you could bring in. Where like, hey, we think Marvin's a number 1 right away. We can have Tyler Boyd and Demario Douglas just be our secondary guys this year, and then you just add some QB run game to your offense with Fields, and you've got a good running back room led by Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, Justin Fields instantly makes this offense intriguing, if nothing else.
Oh, I mean, it will make it difficult to defend because Fields can do so many things off schedule, and that's been probably the biggest issue for New England is that their on-schedule stuff and what they are scripting has not been working. And then when the pocket collapses, well, Zappe's shown a little bit of mobility, but he's not wowing you, and he just either gets sacked. That was my biggest issue with Mac Jones, as much as I enjoyed watching him his rookie season, that even though he was solid, like if you crash the pocket, there's really not much going to happen. Fields obviously can do anything outside of the pocket.
And I think an underrated element to this idea, and keyword being element, pun intended, is Fields is an elements guy. He just played one of the best games of his career in a snowstorm. He's got big hands. He can throw the ball in bad weather. We've seen that with his running ability. That plays in bad weather. And you know when New England's going to be a contending team, whenever that is, there's value in having a quarterback that has a strong arm and can throw through those piercing winds. I go back to that game a couple of years ago. I know they won it, but when Mac Jones only threw the ball 3 times, like when you were watching him and Josh Allen play in that game, Josh Allen you could still throw the ball downfield with. You could not do that with Mac Jones. Like it literally was not an option for the Patriots, which is really what makes that win kind of an all-time Belichick win, if we're being completely honest. But Justin Fields can do that. We just saw him do it over the weekend. He's had games like that in Chicago. He played at Ohio State in cold weather games in college. So, obviously Tom Brady kind of defied logic because he was never the most mobile or even strongest arm guy, but he was just such a gamer that he was able to do it. But a guy like Fields in these December, January games, he's got the physical attributes to overcome bad weather. So I think that's something that's pretty appealing if they were to decide to go that route. Again, ball is in Chicago's court in the draft for a second straight year, so it's going to be very fascinating. And again, that's why you should root for a loss too, because if you are in camp trade up, well, it's easier to trade up from 3 than it is for 5 or 6, for example. So we will see what happens. Subscribe to the channel. We got some juicy rumors to discuss on tomorrow's show as well. Until then, we will see you guys.